Hello, welcome to PODna. This is a sports show with some Southern and Cajun flair. I'm Daniel Hawks. That's Jared Roser. Today we are going to talk about LSU making it to the Super Regionals. I know, right? And also a little NBA Finals preview. Jared, how you doing today?
Good, man. LSU salvaged that region Monday night. I've got a couple of nights off now between baseball and NBA Finals stuff, so I might watch a movie at some point, which will be nice. And then
I was actually
we
thinking
get some
about going to
Super
see
Regionals in
Sinners
Baton
finally
Rouge, some
tonight.
finals. It's good. I have seen that. Very good movie. A lot going on. A lot to like.
Well, I'll be able to next episode we can talk about it. We can do a whole breakdown. But LSU beats Little Rock last night, 9-5, I believe was the final score. I don't have it right in front of me.
10-6, but close.
Yeah, it was right there. They were down 5-1. They ended up coming back. Little Rock is there, and then the top of the ninth, just a couple dingers really help the Tigers solidify that win. And they're going to be moving on to the Super Regional, which will be in Baton Rouge versus West Virginia. Winner of that goes to Omaha. So I do not know too much about this LSU baseball team, just not a huge in my ecosystem up here in Chicago. So for me, a LSU fan, watched the game last night, loved it. What do I need to know about this team? What do I need to know about the matchup coming up? In general, like, treat me like I'm an idiot because I am. Tell me what's good about this LSU baseball team.
How does this change from just the usual shtick between us at this point? Then I don't know.
It doesn't. I was trying to be on my P's and Q's, man.
Yeah, I mean, look, this LSU team, they're the number 6 national seed, obviously, but they're a team that went into this NCAA tournament among the couple of betting favorites to win the whole darn thing. They and Arkansas have been kind of viewed in that light, despite the fact that, the Razorbacks and Tigers are the 3 and 6 seed. It was a chaotic weekend this weekend around the country where 7 of those top 16 national seeds fell, including the top 2 seeds in Vanderbilt and Texas. And so this is the first time a number 1 or a number 2 seed fell in the regional since 2018. Only the second time ever that both have fallen in the same regional weekend, and the first time was 2014. Those are the only 2 years in the history of the current format of the college baseball tournament in which there have been more regional upsets than we saw this weekend. And the Tigers found themselves kind of backed against the wall in a lot of ways of potentially falling into that chaotic weekend where they, for the first time in LSU history under the format, which dates back to 1999, they drop a regional game to a 4 seed within the regional, the Little Rock team that came in with a losing record on the season, but got hot at the right time. And then suddenly you're down 5-1 early, and the script is looking frustratingly familiar to what Sunday night script was, where walks are contributing to Trojans runs, and you're suddenly leaving a prime opportunity to answer, stranding three on base there in the 3rd inning. And so they did that twice on Sunday night, and it was starting to get really tense in Baton Rouge. But hell of a job, resiliency, finding guys to step up in spots. A freshman pitcher in Casey Evans comes in and throws
he was dealing.
Six innings, 12 strikeouts, career high so far. He struck out 9 straight, and so really just stabilized the thing. And then the bats got going as well.
It was really cool to see him. Not only like the 9 strikeouts, the 9 batters put down in a row were great, but to see him when towards the end before he got taken out, he gets back against the wall, bases loaded, and then just strikes another guy out. And I was pumped up. I was literally had done an event for the bar group that I work up here. Yeah. And I was literally at the bar. I was the only person like really watching this. And I was just like, I was getting after it. All right. I was being a true fair weather fan.
Yeah. He's a guy that to see, he's someone that's viewed as, kind of the future ace of that pitching staff when the guys at the top of that staff this year end up going off and being high MLB draft picks this summer. And so to watch him step up in that setting on Monday night was huge for obviously the future, but the immediate potential of making a run. Because look, you can go into this super regional and feel really good about the fact that you have Cade Anderson and Anthony Ianson, and those guys are going to give you chances, really strong chances to win a 2 out of 3 series. But when you get up to Omaha, you've got to have other guys ready to step up. And so to see that performance in that setting from Case and Evans was huge as he continues to develop as a young pitcher. And then again, the bats coming alive was huge on Monday night. They have not been great all season with runners in scoring position, and it really burnt them Sunday and looked poised to potentially burn them again Monday. They stranded 44 runners over the 4 games this weekend, which is a recipe for potential disaster when you get into some tight games as you go deeper into the postseason. And so fortunately they were able to survive that. Ethan Fry was 4 for 4 with a home run, 2 doubles, 2 walks, 4 RBIs on Monday night. Luis Hernandez had a couple of home runs. Jared Jones, who has been the big bat in that lineup the bulk of the season, hadn't had an extra base hit since May 17th, the end of the regular season, had been struggling in the regional. He comes alive a little bit with a couple of hits last night and a home run late that helped provide them a couple of insurance runs. And so a lot of really positive pieces of, just momentum coming out of this thing, the resiliency to get out of it and the momentum to kind of take into now a super regional at home later this week.
And Super Regional will start on Saturday. I believe the first game is at 1 p.m. Saturday from the box. West Virginia, do you know too much about this West Virginia team? What are they coming in with? What are their strengths? What are, some stuff that maybe LSU could exploit when they're playing them this upcoming weekend?
Not a ton yet. I mean, this is a West Virginia team that reached its first ever Super Regional last year, and now they go back-to-back years, and so they've certainly been a nice trip for the Mountaineers program. I don't know a ton about them yet. I'll look more into them this week with some kind of preview articles and whatnot, but they went up to Clemson. They swept through that thing. They beat Kentucky, and then Clemson, and then Kentucky again. All 3 games were very different. The Kentucky game on Friday was a close, lower scoring game. The Clemson game, they get up big. Clemson comes roaring back, and then West Virginia kind of shows some clutch gene there late with 5 runs in the final 2 innings, 4 runs in the top of the 9th to get out of that thing and stun those Tigers. And then on Sunday, they trailed Kentucky at one point 11-7 and are able to come back. They had a couple huge crooked innings with 6 runs to really feed that eventual 13-12 win. And so as the regional went on, I don't know how much of that was West Virginia bats getting comfortable in the setting and kind of gaining some momentum, and how much of that was some pitching staffs for other teams wearing out a little bit, but they end up gaining steam offensively over the course of the weekend. And now you kind of reset a little bit. They'll come down to Baton Rouge for the first time ever, the first time these programs have ever faced one another, and have to deal with the Alex Box setting, which will be interesting. And for me, my biggest thing going into this weekend is just, if you're LSU and you've got Cade Anderson and Anthony Ianson and you need to win 2 games, you feel pretty good about your chances regardless of who's in the other dugout. And so that's kind of the starting point for me, is if they can pitch the way they have been pitching, you feel really good for the Tigers. But, again, I'll look more closely at the Mountaineers over the next couple of days.
Do you think, let's just do picks, predictions. I don't know much, and I'm an LSU fan, so I'm going to say LSU in 2 days, not 3. Do you think that, what's your prediction with this moving forward? Do you think it goes to Monday, or do you think, like we said, that maybe those pitchers bring the right stuff, and this is a lot shorter Super Regional than a longer one?
Yeah, I think they have that potential. Certainly, it's going to come down to if those bats can come through the way that they did when they really needed them to on Monday, or if you have some instances where you miss opportunities. Because I do think that the pitchers atop that LSU staff are going to continue their momentum, and they're going to pitch pretty lights out and make it difficult for the Mountaineers to score many runs. And so if you can just cash in on a few opportunities along the way with those 2 guys on the mound for you, you got to feel pretty good about your chances. And I'm not going to be surprised if LSU wins this thing in 2, because I think they're built to win 2 games at the top of things.
I was going to say they're built to last, but then that didn't make sense, so I didn't say it. But now that I've said it out loud, it's it's out there, so that's great. Well, go Tigers this weekend. Like I said, I have no stake in the game. I'm saying that they're going to do 2, so it's probably going to be 3 games, and I'm probably going to be watching another game on Monday. Very nervous for what's happening. So let's move on. NBA Finals are set. Indiana Pacers and the Oklahoma City Thunder. Why do you think the Pacers won't get swept?
It's a good Indiana team. I was really on a little bit of a roller coaster as you asked that question. I didn't know, how it was going to end, and I think it ended the right way, honestly, because probably the most common prediction, and my prediction is going to be that OKC wins in 5. And I think,
they're
at the end of the day,
negative 700, I think, right now on FanDuel. So they're far away, and they should be. They put together one of the best all around put together seasons that we've seen any team in recent memory do. It's as much as I hate the AT&T commercial, them on the court has been fun to watch. Them off the court behind the camera is one of the worst things I've ever seen in my entire effing life.
I don't know, man. Even just from team vibe dynamics and guys that have been in the league as many times as I've had a curse jar over Pat Bev and some of the teams that he's been on and just whatnot along the way. OKC is some of those commercials are kind of corny, but they're not as bad as a lot of other alternatives around the league in recent years. But it's been interesting to watch them finally get their flowers, because whether it be just because they're young or because they have corny AT&T commercials in your case, they have felt like a team that people don't want to admit has been as dominant all season long as they have been. And they finally started to become sort of unignorable for folks as they continue to push and take care of Minnesota the way they did. But to answer your initial question of why won't Indiana get swept, I think it's an Indiana team that matches up in terms of styles well with what OKC wants to do when you have a point guard in Tyrese Halliburton that takes care of the ball as well as he generally does, and a team that is as deep as Indiana is and wants to run just as well. And so there's going to be some track meets, and Indiana is going to feel more comfortable in those situations than maybe some of those teams that OKC has seen thus far in the playoffs have been. And you have an OKC team that is prone at times to maybe not shoot as well as they would like in some situations, and they'll have to go to Indiana for at least 2 games and win on the road to potentially get a sweep. And that place has been crazy supporting the Pacers throughout the postseason. And now they get back to the finals for the first time in several years. And so I think there's certainly an opportunity for, some shots to not fall or the Pacers to just be right there with them and pull one out at home maybe. But I don't think it's going to be a long series by any stretch of the imagination. No. I'm just interested to see if the Pacers can battle them in a couple of these games and, potentially win 1, maybe 2, and surprise me a little bit.
One of the things that was so interesting to see this Thunder team do with Minnesota and Ant was how relentless, like, you can go from Shea, who's a very good defender, to Lou Dort, to Caruso, to Jalen Williams, and then you've got just Chet roaming the paint. And so you could clearly tell how much it frustrated Anthony Edwards, because they were picking him up, 94 feet for all 48 minutes. And that is, one, incredible that they were able to do that so consistently throughout that series. But also, like, it just speaks to where this Thunder team's mindset is. And like you said, like, how close they are. They are truly a team that plays together. And they all are, and I think this Indiana team does too. I think both these teams, like you said, they are deep. They've played a lot together. But this Thunder team is just, the way that it feels like they approach each game and each defensive matchup with the stars that they face has been just different. And the only person that gave them fits was the best player in the world, Jokic. like, and he gives everyone fits. Like that's literally what he does. And if he had, a little more help on that Nuggets team, then maybe the Nuggets are actually in these finals too. But that didn't happen, and OKC took care of business. But it's looked easy since then, outside of the first round, and then this past round in the conference finals. It just looked like the only game that they lost in that. It just kind of looked like they knew they had one in the back pocket. They were like, okay, that's fine.
The Joker and I don't want to get like too sidetracked on it because look, Denver's been out for 2 weeks now or whatever, but the Joker piece of this conversation is going to be really interesting if in fact OKC does roll through these finals and a Denver team that people had kind of overlooked somewhat compared to, a couple years back, suddenly we'll be looking back and saying, oh, that's the only team that really gave a series to the eventual champions who just kind of rolled through everybody. But I think part of that equation is also that series was such a maturation process for this OKC team as well, that once they got through that hurdle and had to deal with Joker and everything he brought to the table and kind of find ways to navigate around it and survive, that they've just continued to build on that. And so that is another piece that really bodes poorly for Indiana, because I think the OKC, as great as they've been all season, is now kind of peaking what has been a great season from start to finish. And that as much as Indiana has guys, depth, I mean, athletes everywhere can run the floor and play together and, throw a lot at you. OKC is going to make life miserable for those dudes. You saw in the late in that was able to kind of find some success again and start looking like, okay, can they turn this into a series here late? It was everything they were throwing at Tyrese Halliburton, just kind of throw off the rhythm of some of that free-flowing offense, where there were times Mikal Bridges looks like he's just hugging Tyrese Halliburton around the court and they're kind of letting it slide. That's what we watched OKC do to Joker at times in the second round. And so if you can do that to Joker, good luck Tyrese handling that OKC length and physicality.
Yeah, like they're not going to be able, like they were with New York, they were hunting Brunson and Cat all the time when they were on offense, which they should. That's, not either of their strong suits. And that's not going to, when you go from Lou Dort to Alex Caruso, then to Jalen Williams, then maybe Hardenstein is like in there too. Like it's just
Case and Wallace, Chet, everyone defends.
Yes, everyone defends and defends at a high level. That I think it's going to be very interesting to see if Indiana's assist to turnover ratio is vastly different from what we've seen in the playoffs, because that is something this Thunder team does so well, is create turnovers. It'll be interesting. Who you got?
I mean, I'm going Thunder in 5. And I think there are going to be games, and we've seen it happen throughout the playoffs, that in a very different way, this OKC team has a level of the old kind of peak Warriors to it, in the sense that you can be in this close game, or you can maybe even have a small lead, and then suddenly you look up and you've been blitzed and they're up 15 in the blink of an eye. And those old Warriors teams, it was, oh shoot, Steph and Clay just got hot. For this Thunder team, it's
there are 5 steals in a row that have led to breakout points and dunks.
They forced half a dozen steals in a span of 2 minutes, and we haven't gotten a good look at the basket since. And all of a sudden, we're down 15.
There was times that the Timberwolves had trouble making an inbounds pass. And that's something that I feel like shouldn't happen at the NBA level, because these are all such good athletes who have been dedicating their lives to this sport. But that just speaks to how good the Thunder are in defense. And I still don't think it takes away any credit from the season that Indiana had, because no one expected them to be here. The run that they've had through this final has been great. But it's really, and then we're saying all this too. And also let's remember how much of an underdog in 2011 that Mavericks team that Rick Carlisle coached was to the Heat with LeBron and Wade and everything. And he found a way. So Rick Carlisle is a great coach. I'm sure he's going to come in with a game plan. Is that game plan going to be able to work. Because if it does and he shocks the world, I think Carlisle goes to another level, another tier above, which, you know, I think a lot of people look at him as obviously a really, really good coach. But I think this would put him in like an upper echelon where, you know, people look at Spoelstra or Ty Lue or someone in that. I think maybe he's on that Ty Lue level already, but, you know, the real greats of coaching in the NBA, I think if Carlisle was able to pull this off, you would have to start looking at that.
Yeah, I think he's up pretty high on that list right now, but that people just don't necessarily talk about him as much. And so I'm glad you mentioned him in that equation, because he's in, again, back to your original question of why won't the Pacers get swept? Rick Carlisle is a huge piece of that equation, and their chances hinge heavily on what he's able to do as a strategist. And so I do have a lot of confidence that he'll be able to cook some things up and have those guys ready to play and exploit some things with OKC. I do not think that he will have ready to do so 4 times successfully over a 7-game series. And so, you know, I don't want to be premature and start congratulating the Thunder on their championship, but it certainly feels.
Congratulations, Oklahoma City, on your first championship. Oh man, well, that's all we got for you today. A little light one, you know, not too much stuff going on in the summer, but we're gonna stay here. We're gonna update you on anything that is happening in the sports world in Louisiana and all around. That's what we do here at PODna. Make sure you follow Louisiana versus All Y'all as well on YouTube, Twitter, or X, whatever you want to call it now, and Instagram, LA versus All Y'all, PODna_LA on Instagram. You can follow us there. Before we get out of here, Jared, you got anything else?
No, that's about it, man. Looking forward to, obviously, we talked a lot about this baseball team, so watching some LSU Super Regionals this weekend, hopefully get a chance to maybe, you know, get somebody to talk even more in-depth LSU baseball on the channel at some point this week. And then for me, so much of the summer is heavy college recruiting camps. And so LSU really ramps up this week, Tulane Cajuns and so forth. And so I'll be out on a lot of that stuff the next few weeks and make sure to keep up.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see which of these, where these LSU guys go, the pitchers in the upcoming draft, which is just right around the corner for MLB. Because who's the top pitcher? I saw him in a mock draft earlier, like at 6 or 7. So I'm very interested to see where they go. Go ahead. Yeah.
Cade Anderson, the Louisiana native, St. Paul's out there in St. Tammany Parish, the big lefty is people are talking about. I mean, really, really high up in that first round, and so we'll see. Yeah. And I think it's probably top 2 or 3
pitchers and wide
guy.
receivers. It's what we do. Okay. Oh, that's all we got for you today. Thank you for stopping by, hanging out. We appreciate it. PODna.